All right, well, I think we'll get started. And before the actual presentation, I just wanted to say good evening and welcome everyone to the Center for Businesses in Transition Co-op Working Group Training Program for preparing to successfully transition your business. Thank you so much for choosing to be with us tonight and invested in your business transition. My name is Matthew Courtwright, and along with Aaron Mullen from the Chamber office, we are proud to be CBIT liaisons via our partnership with the Adirondack North Country Association. I'd like to introduce other CBIT liaisons with us tonight, who will also be presenters, as well as INCA team members and partners. We have Laura Pearson from the Ogdensburg Area Chamber of Commerce and the St. Lawrence County Chamber Workforce Development Coordinator. We have Matt Tucker, who's the program coordinator for the Greater Watertown North Country Chamber of Commerce. We do have a couple of Hamilton County reps, but unfortunately they are under the weather and could not join us tonight. So we will certainly give a shout out to them and thank them. We have Danny Delaney, who is the Entrepreneurial Economy Program Director for INCA. Kim Mannion will be joining us. She's the Director of Operations and a Small Business Specialist for INCA. And Kim may jump in and out through our presentations to clarify information or add content. We have Zach Hobbs, who is the Regional Advocacy and Workforce Development Coordinator for INCA. And last and certainly not least, we have Angela Smith, who is the Seller Advisor for the CBIT program and an absolutely outstanding business advisor who we're happy to have on the call with us tonight. At this time, I'll turn the presentation over to the INCA team just for some general housekeeping and any further introductions or anything I missed, and then we'll get right into the presentation. Danny?
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. That was a wonderful introduction. We're so glad to have everybody here tonight. INCA is the Adirondack North Country Association. We're focused on the 14 northernmost counties in New York, growing the new economy. And you are here for a really specific reason, and we really want you to get right into that content about transitioning your business. But just as a quick sort of thought as we're getting started, this session, if you are ready, you don't have to be, but if you are ready to be public facing about your intentions to sell your business, this series hopefully is leading you up to joining us at the Small Communities, Big Opportunities Conference, February 12th through the 14th at the Hotel Saranac and in person. It's in person, or you can attend virtually, excuse me. So we look forward to having you there. And if you are ready for that, if you're not, that's okay too. But we want to make sure that you're prepared as possible. So there'll be these 2 sessions in between. Angela Smith, our seller advisor for the program, will be reaching out to you to help with additional valuation support or other things you may need to prepare. If you have questions about INCA or the Center for Business and Transition in general, which is a regional partnership made up of an amazing group of organizations and humans focused on business transitions and getting folks ready to take over, please don't hesitate to reach out. Oh, and I think I'm sorry. I think I was supposed to say, and this is the agenda. You can take a look at what's going to be happening this evening. All right, great. Now I'm going to send it over to Laura, who's going to just jump right in to the program tonight. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Laura Pearson, and as Matt said, I'm the Executive Director of the Ogdensburg Chamber of Commerce and the Workforce Development Coordinator for St. Lawrence County Chamber. So what is CBIT? CBIT is an organization that will help you transition your business from where you are right now to find the right person to buy your business for you. We will help you do your valuations. We'll help you do your sales sheet. We'll help you do some marketing for your business. The only thing that we cannot do is we cannot be your lawyer or your financial advisor. Okay. Did I miss anything?
Or accountants, and we can't promise to sell your business for you.
No, we won't promise that, but we'll help you get it ready to sell. How's
yes,
that?
Absolutely. No, Laura, you got it.
Okay. So the North Country Center for Business and Transition, CBIT, addresses the loss of area businesses by providing matchmaking services between business sellers and potential buyers, access to planning tools, and connection with existing services. Who we are. Although we call it a center, it's a dynamic, evolving partnership between regional organizations and individuals invested in the retention of future of our business and communities. We are keeping our greenhouses, our shops, our main streets alive in bloom. There's a typo there, but that's okay. The rise in transitions. Oops. Retiring baby boomers own nearly half of privately held businesses with employees in the U.S., impacting employees 24.7 million, 1 in 6 private sector employees, payroll 949.1 billion, and sales of 5.14 trillion. Types of transitions. Center staff and partners will work across the region to increase the number of successful transitions in 3 areas. Businesses looking to sell on the open market, intergenerational family transitions, and conversions to employee ownership. You are not alone, and it doesn't happen overnight. Let's have a quick reality check. Commonly known that only 20% of listed businesses actually sell. That's bad, the bad news. The good news is that with knowledge and information, you can control or at least help control many of the documented reasons why businesses don't sell. Five common reasons that businesses don't sell and are subsequently taken off the market. Sellers' unrealistic expectations, 33%. Pros in the industry say as high as 50%. Lack of buyer preparation, 15%. Poor seller preparation, 11%. Unreasonable non-financial demands, 9%. Personality conflicts, 9%. Let's beat the odds together. The good news is that with knowledge and information, you can control or at least help control many of the documented reasons why businesses don't sell. Now we're going to talk about preparing to sell.
Hey, Laura.
Yes.
Hey, it's Kim. So
Hi,
I'm
Kim.
going to just jump in here. Hi.
Okay.
I'm not quite home yet because there was terrible weather in Saranac Lake and I'm still in the car. So I apologize. So the essence of that kind of the statistics is the biggest reason why businesses don't sell is that business owners overprice their businesses. And what we really want to do through the course of our time together is work with you to give you information about the process, but also help you establish a value for your business that works for you as the seller, but also works and cash flows for the buyers. So we'll talk a lot about that, but I just wanted to jump in and kind of add that 2 cents.
Right. Thank you, Kim.
Sure.
Be safe on that road. Okay.
Thanks.
If you don't already, start keeping meticulous records, especially financial. Tighten up your bookkeeping, go back and clean it up, create monthly financials if possible. Go to the next level of financial detail. Break out your revenue and COGS by category, which is cost of goods sold by category. Understand your profit margin as granularly as possible. If 2 locations or 2 lines of business, create a P&L for each. How to make money on paper. Pay more taxes. Increase your profitability with the IRS. Historically, trying to minimize taxes, now you need to maximize profitability on the books. Understand your seller's discretionary earnings, the SDE, since it determines the value of your small business. What you bring to the table is goodwill. Take these steps and you can increase both the price of your business and financing options for your buyer.
Laura, is it okay if I jump in there too?
Yep.
Great. So we see this a lot when we're working with business owners. So CBIT works with over 215 businesses. And we have about 37 successful transitions that have gone through the program to some degree. But one thing we hear over and over again is, oh, yeah, I know my taxes look this way, but like I really make a lot more money, which is fine. That's what you should be doing as a small business owner, is making sure that you're profitable and sustainable for you and your family in the moment. But when it comes time to sell, that's sort of like, hey, but I do make this money doing all these other things, but it's not clear in the books, isn't going to translate for someone who wants to buy your business and has to go to the bank and say, hey, this costs this, that, or the amount of this. And where's this money coming from? It's not here. I'm not going to give you a loan for it. So if you want someone else to be financeable to take over your business, those things need to be clear. And we also recommend starting this process and starting to think about how to make sure that your taxes are reflecting your profitability 3 to 5 years in advance of when you're selling. That's not always possible, and that's okay. But the sooner you start thinking about that and sort of reflecting what money you're actually taking in, the better.
Thank you. Train your staff to manage. Teach your staff how to run your business. Buyers want to know the business isn't a success, isn't contingent upon you being there. Train key staff in the critical operations of your business. Go on vacation. While we're on the subject of employees, your employee or employees may be the perfect successor for you. Even if they don't have the skills and knowledge right now, they could in the future. You know them and trust them, at least the ones you would consider selling to. It may be possible to overcome a lack of financial resources with creative financing. Overview of the selling process. I love this. What's it called? I can't even think of what it's called. I love this visual. It's very good.
Process.
Yes, Kim has developed, I think Kim developed this, didn't you, Danny? It's awesome because it tells you, it tells you how the flow is supposed to work. You need to build your team. Are you going to be anonymous? Do you want to be public? You have to work on your valuation. You have to develop your sell sheet. You have to develop your marketing plan. You have to find an interested buyer. You have to have the initial vetting of the buyer. You have to have them sign, and you have to both sign a non-disclosure agreement. You have to have your initial evaluation, and then you get into the financing part. You do diligence, negotiation, your offer letter of interest, and more negotiations. You have to have a contract or what the contingencies are. You have the execution of purchase and sale agreement, and then you sold your business. So first you want to build your team. The two most important team members are your accountant and your attorney. Engage with your accountant early to help you understand the tax implications of your transition. Different assets are taxed at different rates, capital gain versus ordinary income. You will use that information during your negotiations to minimize your tax liability. Anonymous. You will need to decide if you want to market your business openly or confidentially. Openly is obviously easier, but it can be very disruptive to your business. You might get a lot of people who are looky-loos, who just want information about what you're going to do. And if you're selling, and how much are you selling, and how much are you asking for it? They ask you a ton of questions. I don't know have any intention of purchasing your business. They're just nosy.
The other thing we hear a lot, Laura, that's so true. The other thing we hear a lot is that folks are not ready to be really public about it because they might have clients who are nervous. Like, you know, if you're an accountant and you say, I'm going to retire next year, people might just say, okay, I should find my new accountant now. And you weren't planning on losing those clients before you retired. That can be really tricky. And the other thing is kind of negotiating if there is somebody who is an employee that you have who could be a really great fit, and you're kind of talking to them and trying to figure that out. Like, you might want to play the field a little bit, but you don't want to scare away this person, but you're not sure if it's going to work out. You know, there might be a period of time where you need to sort of figure those things out as you're moving along.
Yeah, it's all a personal choice. You have to figure out what's best for you. But we can help you go through all that too. Evaluation process. You will need to establish a value or asking price for your business. You will value your goodwill, inventory, your furniture, fixtures, equipment, and any other assets. You will have a separate valuation for any real estate. Your sell sheet. A sell sheet is basically a resume for your business. It's best if it's tight and concise and emphasizes the strengths of your business. It will be the foundation for your marketing efforts. That's a sample of a sell sheet. And there are some samples on the ownandnorthcountrybusiness.com that you can look at of ones that are completed. Danny put the website in the chat for us. Marketing. Depending on anonymous or not, you can use a combination of marketing strategies, including networking with professionals, networking with other business owners, email, social media, snail mail, online marketing sites such as bizbuysell.com. There's a fee for that too, I think, if you register your business for bizbuysell.com. Hey, I made it through.
Nice job, Laura.
Thanks. I can read. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and my timing could be better.
You're right.
I'm pretty sure I'm taking the second session for the Hamilton County folks.
Right. I'm
cool. So you got us through the initial vetting of a buyer. I just want to kind of touch on that just a tiny bit more. If anybody's been through a buy-sell process, you know that a buyer is going to want to take a look at your financials, and that's because they want to check the health of the business. The reverse is true too. You as the seller can vet your buyer and should vet your potential buyer, because you don't want to spend a lot of time with someone that doesn't have the means, skills, etc., to buy your business. So if you want to move on to the next slide is a non-disclosure. And it's a mutual non-disclosure because, as I mentioned, the buyer's going to take a look at your books, but you're also going to take a look at the buyer's their personal financial statement. You're going to want to see a copy of their credit report and such, because you want to determine if there's any chance of them getting conventional financing. Do they have the down payment that you need in order to sell your business? That kind of thing. And don't be afraid when you're marketing your business to even start the vetting process then. Ask people that respond to marketing pieces that you put out, in their response in an email, say, what is your down payment capabilities? What kind of, how is your credit score? That kind of thing. Because again, you don't want to spend a lot of time with people that aren't going to be able to buy your business. So.
And if I can add just one point, Kim, if people say, oh yeah, I can do the down payment 20%, no problem. Always ask if it's tied into real estate, because sometimes people have equity in their homes and the plan is to sell said home. That could take a while. So those are some of the good questions to ask to gauge, because what if you have multiple buyers, to gauge who might be able to tap into cash quickly versus a little bit of a slower process if they have to sell a home first.
Yep, and one of the things that we'll cover in our next session is financing options and what the different financing options are. And maybe somebody needs to sell their home, But hopefully, if they're going to take kind of a home equity loan, they've gotten that lined up ahead of time, right? And they've gotten those ducks in a row and that kind of thing. So they have the ability to access that cash. So there's all kinds of different ways to finance a business. And you might be kind of thinking, why am I going to learn about financing a business? Isn't that the job of the buyer? But the more that you know about that, the more that you can help and steer and guide the buyer to the available options, you know, whether it's economic development organizations or just kind of getting creative and that kind of thing. So it's information is power, and it's good to know as much as you can about the process. Yeah, the initial evaluation is just kind of this process of starting to learn about the business. You have the non-disclosure. Somebody's going to ask for at least 3 years of documented financials, tax returns, that kind of thing. And that's just to give them enough information to start to put an offer together. And so that process can be as long or short. It doesn't, you know, it's not so great. So the idea is that somebody has learned enough about your business and they then want to make an offer. And the formal way that they make that offer is through what's called a letter of intent. And a letter of intent is not binding, but it really lays out a lot of the terms of the deal, if you will. You know, what exactly it is you're buying, the price, something called an asset allocation that at some point we'll discuss, which there are all kinds of different tax implications for the various elements of the purchase that you're going to make. And each of those is taxed a little differently. And so understanding the tax implications is important. And then you spell that out in the letter of intent. You would include the payment terms, whether or not there's going to be seller financing, how much the down payment is, how long the process is expected to take. 3 years of income is great point, Dave. There is, we say 3 years. Very good catch. When we do our valuations, like 3 years ago, pre-COVID, 3 years would have been fine in terms of the valuation, but COVID really was wacky, right? And some people's business went through the roof. A lot of people's business was in the tank. And so it's valuation is kind of nuanced, and that's where we look at a lot of different things and make some determinations around how we want to include those years of COVID, and whether or not we want to include them. We get a wide range when we have evaluation, and how those years play into that help us determine where we want to end up with the range on the valuation. So yeah, really, really good point. And I think in our next session, we go into in letters of intent in more detail, because the more that you can negotiate conceptually with your buyer in terms of, you know, exactly what you're buying and who, you know, holding paper and this, that, and the next thing, the less you spend with an attorney, right? Because the more that you have to go back and forth through the attorneys at $375 or $275 or whatever it is you're paying your attorney, the bigger your legal bill. And another thing that is outlined in the letter of intent is who is actually going to draft the contract. Because that's a big bulk of the legal expense is who drafts the contract. So we'll go into that in more detail, and we may even provide you with a sample letter of intent, a heavily redacted sample, but that is where we're at. Often what comes with the letter of intent is a down payment. It's called earnest money. And it just shows the seller that a buyer is serious. That money is generally held in escrow with one of the attorneys. Generally, it's the selling attorney, but it doesn't have to be. And again, it gets applied to the purchase price when that actually happens. But again, it just demonstrates that you are that your buyer is serious about moving forward. The due diligence process. This is where a buyer takes a really, really deep dive into your business, and they want to learn everything about your business. They want to learn about your processes and procedures. They want to learn about your approach to marketing. They want to learn about they may go even deeper on your financials. And that's where Laura talked about understanding your margin by product line, by service area, really digging into your business to understand where the opportunities are, where the potential weaknesses are in your business, and a really, really deep dive into your business. In your letter of intent, you will determine a time period for that due diligence. Because what will happen, and I didn't mention this, with the earnest money, generally that will mean that you go into a period of exclusivity with a potential buyer. It means that you will not entertain or even talk to another potential buyer while you're in that period of exclusivity, because it gives the current buyer exclusive right to buy your business should everything work out as they hope. The seller wants that period of exclusivity to be as short as possible, right? They want to find out if you're capable. They want to see if this is going to happen. And if it's not, let's move on. Let's get it back on the market. The buyer, on the other hand, often wants more time, right? Because they want more time to be able to do a thorough dig into your business. The other thing that's often outlined is in the letter of intent is the time period during which you want to close on the business. I'll be honest, when I bought my business, I dragged my feet on getting financing, and I dragged my feet because writing a business plan is really hard. And you have to write a business plan to get most any kind of financing, whether it's a gap lender or traditional financing or whatever. And it was just a mental hurdle, and my feet were not held to the fire in terms of the timeline. And so as a seller, I would encourage you to be very, very kind of strict with your timeline and make sure that things are moving forward. And that's something that when I work with sellers, I really encourage them to do that. So yeah. During the due diligence period, you may uncover things that you didn't know when you did your initial evaluation and when you put your letter of intent on the table. As we said, the letter of intent is not binding. And when you go to contract, where you actually kind of agree to things, kind of would be after your due diligence. But when you go to contract, everything is kind of vetted, but there may be a contingency around financing. And so you do your due diligence. During due diligence, you may negotiate things further. You negotiate, and then you do finally get to contract. And it's at this time that, and actually it could be really at any point along this, but the next slide will just show financing kind of goes along in parallel with all of this. And hopefully the buyer has gotten their ducks in a row from the perspective of financing. But this is where, once you have that letter of intent and things are moving forward, you do actually kind of need the contract in order to really move forward with this. But a buyer can start to establish relationship with conventional lenders or gap lenders. They can start to have conversation with you. I did not know this when I bought my business, and I really wish I had. About 80 to 90% of businesses are sold with some element of owner financing. And it varies wildly in terms of how much that proportion of financing is. I don't think it's in this session. I think it's in the next session where we talk about valuation. And there are a number of components that go into valuing your business. And goodwill is that component of the intangibles. And it's those intangibles that are very difficult to get financed because there's no collateral. There's nothing to secure that. And so that's very often where the seller comes in and offers to do seller financing to cover that goodwill, and potentially working capital, just again, because it's cash. But really think about that. And not only does it open up your pool of potential buyers, but it really can move things along. Like we had a sale that closed this past summer. And between seller financing, I mean, the whole thing happened in like 2 or 3 months, which was kind of nuts. But seller financing can really move things along really, really quickly. The one thing that I would say, as you move through this process, and we'll talk about priorities and, you know, whether selling your business for top dollar is your top priority, or is it selling to the right people and you're willing to wait longer to be able to sell to the right people or to sell for top dollar. But another item that you really need to understand kind of now before you get into the heat of the battle, I say, because it does get a little emotional and contentious sometimes, is understand how much cash you need at the close. So that is the parts that you're not holding paper for. Right. And it could be 50% of it. It could be 90% of the value of the business, but that's a really important number to know and to understand that. So I think I got it all there.
Kim, before you move on from that, you know, one thing I heard that you said, and maybe you and or Angela can speak to this a little bit, is as a seller, you want folks to think about like putting those deadlines in place, but then also there needs to be some flexibility as plans seem to change a lot. You know, most of our business owners, I think both of you have seen, like, had one plan, this is how I'm going to sell my business, this is who I'm going to sell it to, and then that changed multiple times over the course of their journey. Could you or maybe Angela for a second just kind of speak to that sort of like balance between flexibility and putting a timeline on things?
Why don't you jump in there, Angela?
So there's a lot that we can talk about flexibility and balance, but you know, typically when someone first puts their business on the market, often if we ask, do you want to hold paper? No. And you know, so it sits there for a little bit and then they're like, okay, well, maybe I could consider holding paper, or, you know, there's a lot of things that'll happen. If it's a seasonal business, that puts you in a little bit of a tighter timeline to take over, especially for the buyer, because a buyer will want to take over usually at just the right time of the year. So they don't have to cut 2 checks, one for the business, but one for their working capital, if they're buying a business after the busy season. So timelines are going to vary greatly, and sometimes it's very dependent on attorneys. I've seen of a lot of attorneys that have thrown the timeline into turmoil. So what's most important is just to keep things moving. And that's why when you build your team, if you're working with CBIT or an SBDC advisor or, you know, whoever it may be, sometimes you can have multiple people checking into, you know, with the lenders or with the attorneys and keeping that process moving. Is that kind of circle a little bit with the flexibility of the question?
That's great. Thank you so much. Kim, is there anything you would add to that?
No, I think it's good. It's just, yeah, the idea of seller financing has so many implications.
Is there a general length of time for owners holding paper?
Great question. So it varies wildly. If you look at businesses on bizbuysell.com, they will say, you know, I'm selling my business for $1 million and I'll hold paper for 150,000 for 2 years. If you do the debt service on 150,000 for 2 years, it'd be interesting to bring up an amortization table, but it's a lot of money. So when we talk about valuation, and we'll talk about, I call it validating the valuation, which is basically looking at the value of your business and does it cash flow for the buyer, right? Whoever's going to buy this business, we make some assumptions around, for the purposes of our example, let's say your business is worth 100,000. Right. Anybody that's going to get any kind of financing is going to have to put down at least 20%. Right. So we have a 20% down payment. So we're going to finance 80,000, and some of it may be inventory that you can finance at 5 to 7 years. There may be a real estate component that you can do for longer. The wild card often is the goodwill. And what can often make a deal work or not work is how willing an owner is to push out the term on the goodwill. And yes, I understand that it's riskier because it's longer, but I would just say keep an open mind. 3 to 5 years is probably pretty reasonable. I've seen it pushed out longer, but I think that's probably a pretty decent number, a number of years in terms of the term. Angela, what would you say? Would you say that's the ballpark?
Yes, and it's really about making the deal work for you and the buyer, so it's negotiable. One thing I was just thinking of, Kim, was oh, I'm going to lose my train of thought. I'll come back to it. Totally gone. Sorry.
Happens to me all the time. I hate it. I have to write it down. It flies out of my head so fast. Cool. Yeah, no, great question. Thank you. And one thing that we said, if you ever feel intimidated to ask a question, just direct your questions to either Danny or Zach or somebody. And that way you don't have to, because you can write questions in the chat. But if you don't want to write a question to everybody, in the little drop-down box, you can direct it to either Danny or Zach or Angela, and that way they can read it off to us, and you don't have to, if you're intimidated. We try to break down barriers to asking questions, and so that's it.
It came back.
Oh, excellent. I stalled long enough.
Don't lose it again.
Okay.
I was just going to say, if you're trying to extend it for 10 years and it doesn't work for you, there I've seen, especially with economic development agency financing, well, let's just say you can say, I'm gonna seller finance for 3 years, but after that you have to go and get a loan. So there's a balloon payment, so they have to go out and get a loan, because now they're going to have 3 years of them running the business. They should be in a position to finance a little bit easier than potentially at the time of the purchase. So that is sometimes something where there's a compromise and there's a balloon payment after 3 or 5 years that becomes due, which triggers bank financing.
Yeah, great point. Very, very good point. Yeah, so then, hopefully you have hammered out in your letter of intent conceptually all of the things, and you've agreed on all of the things, all of the components of your of the aspects of your deal. And we'll go through in more detail the elements of the letter of intent in our next session. But you go to contract, and generally the only contingencies at that point are financing and getting closed by a certain date. But once you get to contract, that's a great place to be. And sometimes the delay then is just getting the financing pulled together, and you go to the close and you sign ridiculous amount of pay work, and then you've sold your business, which is really, feels really good. And you walk on pins and needles until that day. And yes, the process takes time, and it can go as quickly as the one I referenced, which was literally like 3 or 4 months. And then all of us that work in this this space, as Danny said earlier, I think we recommend a window of 3 to 5 years to get ready to sell your business. And if you're lucky enough, it happens more quickly. But if you plan, you're not frantically trying to sell your business, and you can be really deliberate and mindful about it and sell your business according to your priorities. And again, whether those priorities are making sure your employees have the right boss going forward. Maybe I know a number of sellers, it was top dollar. They really could give a rat's ass who bought the business. They just wanted top dollar for their business, right? And kind of everything in between. The things that make it go faster are obviously seller financing. Bank financing tends to take much, much longer because of the building of the business plan. One thing that you can do, and a lot of business owners push back on this, but if selling your business quickly is a priority, consider starting writing a business plan, because you know your business, right? And you know your market and such. And even if you get a straw horse of what a business plan would look like, and you could turn that over to someone, it just really, as I said, I dragged my feet on that. And so it really, we had a letter of intent in, I'm going to say April, and we closed in October. And part of that was my fault. So anyway, it's all good. Oh, our intro to valuation. Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to talk about creating a value for your business, and this just kind of shows where it is in the scheme of things. You do want to obviously kind of establish this value sooner in the process than later. And the valuation is the sum of the value of these different components of your business that we'll talk about it. And a lot of people think of it as being this really, really complicated process, and it can be. And there are instances when a really complicated, drawn out process is required. Let's say you're trying to do an ESOP, an employee stock ownership program, or there's some sort of will and inheritance involved and such. But what we are really trying to do with this process is come up with a fair market value for your business. Again, a value that works for you as the seller, right? Like you've spent years building this business, and you want to get something for that, but it needs to work for the buyer as well. Yeah, there's a lot of companies, and they can cost like thousands and thousands of dollars. And there are valuation experts that are out there. CPAs will do it. And we're going to take a little more hands-on, rule of thumb, simple Excel spreadsheet approach to doing it. Yeah, and as we mentioned, there are instances where you do have to pay a lot of money to have it done, but that's not you guys in most instances, so that's a good thing. Yeah, we have this rule of thumb approach to valuation, and it's a fairly straightforward approach. You're going to hear a lot about a term called seller's discretionary earnings, and it's probably on one of these slides. And we apply multipliers, and we're not going to ask you guys to do this, but we just want you to understand it. So that as you move towards getting ready to sell your business, you can understand it and everything else. The numbers that I like to use when doing valuation are revenue, because that's a number that everybody understands, like how much money is your business making, and then this number called seller's discretionary earnings, and I'll wait till the slide comes to talk about that. Let's see. Yeah, fair market value, right? Think about what fair market value is. It's like anything. It's economics, right? It is how much can you get for your business. This thing says the asking price is what the seller wants. The selling price is what the seller receives Fair market value is the highest price the buyer is willing to pay and the lowest price the seller is willing to accept. And negotiation goes on in there, but fair market value is just that. So kind of good quote. There are a bunch of different components that need to be valued. The first is goodwill, and that is that piece that we talked about, the intangible. That's the value of your business, right? Your profitability, your years in service, your revenue, your I was a retailer and I had vendors that were exclusive to me in my business. It's all those different things that you've made up over the years. It's why people buy a business versus starting a business. You have an established revenue over years. You have margin, you have that kind of thing. And there is tremendous value to that. That is the trickier one to establish a value for, but we will help you do that. That's inventory. Some businesses are going to have a lot of inventory, retail and such. Other business, service-oriented business are going to have no inventory. The next piece is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Heavy equipment companies, people that do paving and concrete work, they're going to have a ton of trucks, and the FF&E is all of the equipment that you use through the course of running your business. Concrete trucks for a concrete company. If you're a canoe outfitter, it's your canoes, it's the life jackets, paddles. So it's not just your point of sale system and your racks and that kind of thing. It's all of those things that you use to run your business. Kind of an anecdotal thing that I heard once in my own kind of experience is, if you took the top off your business and you turned your business over, all of the FF&E would fall out, right? The stuff that stays connected is what they call real estate, and the FF&E is all the stuff that would fall out. So then we have some other things, like if you have a retail business and you have a very comprehensive e-commerce site that's spent tens of thousands, that would be something. Maybe you have contracts. There are other elements that you would value as well, and those roll up to be the total value of your business. And we'll kind of talk through how we value those different ones. But I think this is all, you can flash through these because I think I talked through all the inventory, all that good stuff. Yeah, apps, contracts, all of that. So goodwill. Oh, and then you have real estate. So a lot of people say, oh, some people own their real estate. Some people own the business where they own the building where their business resides. Whether they own it as the business owns it, or maybe they have a separate legal entity that owns it, but somewhere they own the real estate. Other people lease, right, or rent space from somebody else. We need to extract the real estate from the value of the business. And this is like 95% of the time. Occasionally we'll have really, like I had folks that owned a cross-country ski business, and the real estate was like a lot of money. And in that instances, the real estate was so much money that it kind of had the goodwill in there and such. But by and large, you want to establish a value for all of these different elements, and then a separate value for the real estate. And when you think about these things, you as a seller, if you own your building, you need to determine, are you willing to sell the business and lease it to the new owners? Or are you only willing to sell it if they're able to buy the business as well? Do they get a first right of refusal if you decide to sell it? One thing that I did not do that I should have done when I sold my business is I sold the business separate from the real estate. And they paid us rent for the first 2 years. And I did not incentivize the buyers to buy my building by putting a portion of the rent towards the purchase price. And in hindsight, I would have done that, even if it was only, I'm supposed to be swimming? Okay, sorry. Kids are supposed to be at swim and they're not, and I don't know why. So yeah, I did not put in, even if it was $300 a month or $500 a month, just so that they thought long and hard about whether or not they wanted to give up that equity that they would have had in the real estate. So I'll just, again, live from my lessons learned, or learn from my lessons learned. Okay. Oh, I guess it's now.
Yep, that's me. I'm back. Thank you. Thank you, Kim, so much. And I'm going to dive into a little bit more of what Kim talked about and introduce the valuing of goodwill. The favor or advantage that a business has acquired, especially through things like its customers, its good reputation and profitability, as Kim mentioned. Valuing goodwill and understanding it. Goodwill is tricky. I know Kim talked about that, and it's a tricky element to value. There's nothing physical. It's not the property. It's not equipment. It's non-tangible. But it is doable, and it's possible, and we have seen that. Some can do it on their own. Some need a bit of assistance if they're not numbers people. And you need to understand the valuation to be able to explain the valuation. So how do you value goodwill? How do you value something that's physically not a thing? You start with a number called seller's discretionary earnings, or SDE. And what is SDE? SDE is an estimate of the total financial benefit of a full-time owner-operator derives from the business on an annual basis. It's also variously referred to as seller's discretionary cash flow, adjusted cash flow, owner benefit, recast earnings, or normalized earnings. SDE is the best number to value small businesses. SDE is a very important concept to understand because it's the foundation of business valuation for small or Main Street or lifestyle businesses. SDE is a strong indicator of the value of goodwill for all small businesses and could have high revenue but low SDE or the other way around.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in here. So our assumption in the valuations that we do are that these are not businesses where somebody's going to buy an equity stake in a business and they're going to be an absentee owner, right? That they're doing it for investment. Businesses that we're talking about are going to be owner-operated, where the individual...
Kim, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you for just a second because we can't hear you very good all of a sudden. Can you try?
Yeah, somebody needs to be muted because there's a lot of background noise. Oh, that whoever it was, that fixed it. So what was I saying? These are businesses that a buyer is going to own and operate, right? They're going to work in the business. And because one of the things that I've run into with valuation is we add back, when we do our valuation, an owner's pay, right? Because that's cash that the owner is deriving from the business. And I've run into pushback when we've been in negotiation where another individual doing evaluation doesn't want to add that back. And that is more of an equity approach to buying a business, because it's somebody that just wants to give you my 100,000, you run the business, right? So we don't get to add that back. Does that make sense? Hopefully, right? Just this concept of when we do or don't add an owner's salary back. Because this SDE is how much money is the business going to make the buyer, right? We're going to add back. I'm going to turn it back over to Matt.
Feel free to continue to add, Kim, because we appreciate it. You can move to the next slide, Zach. So what is SDE add backs? It's calculated by adding back discretionary or one-time expenses called add backs, as Kim had mentioned. And add backs are expenses that are discretionary for the seller and have no bearing on the success of the business. If properly documented, those personal and or discretionary expenditures may be added back in. SDE adjustments, and these are a list of like some of the common categories: auto expenses, insurance, life, health, or auto, dues and subscriptions, and that could be a spectrum of types of dues and subscriptions, utilities, phones, landscaping and snow removal, maintenance, internet, meals and entertainment, for your business, and then of course travel. Calculated SDE and now what? So this is kind of an example. If the SDE is $55,000, there is a industry specific multiplier that's used, which is 1.5, and so the goodwill evaluation on the 55,000 ends up being 82,500. And
I'll
as
just jump in here. These industry specific multipliers, you're like, oh, where do we get these? So there are multipliers for what is that one? There's valuation guides that are specific to all different kinds of industries and types of businesses and that kind of thing. And those multipliers get applied to, as I mentioned, kind of revenue, EBITDA, these kind of weird things that even financial people don't really understand. The two that we like to use are revenue and seller's discretionary earnings. And we'll talk about those more, but that's where we get these industry specific multipliers. And I don't know if you all as sellers have a relationship with the Small Business Development Center. If you don't, and if we don't already have, because we have some of the valuation guides, we would refer you to the SBDC because they can get you the valuation guides.
So we look into to cover this more in depth. We're just kind of going over some concepts, and our next session will be diving into the valuation a little bit more. So some of those add backs aren't legit. You will have to calculate your SDE. Your buyer may disallow certain add backs, so that's something to keep in mind to establish a lower SDE or an actual valuation. And a bank or lender can disallow even more add backs for their SDE or valuation and for their underwriting. So as you prep to sell, you need to kind of consider this.
And that circles back to pay taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Bankers will rely on the tax return. The whole SDE thing, they might add back from owner's salary, but they are going to lean on the cold hard facts that are your tax returns.
So that's the process of selling your business and preparing yourself to sell your business in a nutshell. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into the course of selling or transitioning, but there are resources out there for you. The CBIT program, all of us as liaisons are here to support you. And as Kim mentioned, we have several partner agencies like the SBDC that we can work with. So start planning now if you haven't already, and I know some of you have.
You cut out, Matt.
Did we just lose Matt? Yeah.
It was not a good night weather-wise for all being on the internet.
Can everybody hear me?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Now we
Okay.
can.
For some reason, my internet like totally went out for a minute. You can go to the next slide, Zach. So in summary, in preparing to sell your business, consider some things. Getting your financials and other processes tightened up, dialed in, and in order. Make money on paper, as Kim said several times. Pay more taxes. This will increase the value of your business and a buyer's financing options. And we have seen this to be true. Train your staff to manage your business. And with regard to the selling process itself, there's a lot to know, but the key learnings are what Kim went into detail, and it's the overview of that total selling process and each individual step. And you're going to want to work with your team of professionals, including your accountant and lawyers, your CBIT liaison, maybe an additional business advisor, so you can make the best decisions along the way and really go through the selling process and be successful at the end.
And if I can jump in, one quick point, I think, with the seller's discretionary earning, because I know someone has this kind of business potentially on the call tonight, is if you've done a lot of, if you're a new business, and of course you're not showing a lot of profit, but you've done a lot of reinvestment in your business, like new equipment, new roof, paving the parking lot. These are all things that would come out of the seller's discretionary earnings so we can see the true cash flow of the business. Because obviously someone who buys this business not going to need to repave the driveway or redo the roof. So these are things, in case we didn't mention it enough, that do get add back in. So if right now you're a new business, not really showing a ton of profit, talk to us, because we can take a look and probably identify some of those components when in reality you have been making money. It just doesn't really show on paper because it's on there right now.
You mentioned on that last slide, besides the financials, other things to tighten up. Could you give an example or two of what you're referring to?
With regards,
Besides financials?
Documenting your processes and procedures. We talk about how we call it a brain dump, right? Like if you're leaving a business, you as an employee are leaving a business and you want somebody to kind of step into that role and get up to speed really, really quickly. That's kind of what we're talking about. So document kind of your different processes and procedures that you use so that ideally, employees will stick around and they will have that institutional knowledge, but there's so much that goes on behind, in the background that only you know. So really kind of getting that dialed in and understanding that, the financials. Can anybody else think of other stuff?
Well, I was going to mention, Kim, you talked about a business plan, and we stress the importance of that when you're an existing business, but having that business plan as a document you can hand to the new buyer is really an invaluable kind of piece of the puzzle, because that's something that they're going to need no matter what financing they're going to be getting. So whether they're going to be going to a traditional bank or credit union or financial institution, they're going to be working with economic development agencies to get the funding. The business plan is required all around. So if that's a piece of the puzzle that's ready to roll, that'd be fantastic. I think in any example, in any business for sale, having that ready and as an option, at least at base level.
A business I looked at in New Hampshire several years ago was really so well documented, so well marketing, but he had even gone to the bank and gotten what would an SBA loan look like, and kind of his business wasn't pre-approved, but he had explained his business and showed enough financials where the bank was like, yeah, here are the terms we would do for the deal and the right buyer. So there's a lot of things like that if you have the ability to put some of those pieces in place, certainly will make the deal move forward a lot faster, because these are things that can slow to a crawl if someone, like Kim said, is writing a business plan or shopping around for financing because they can't find a bank or something to do it.
And if you have people that are talking to you directly and are interested in purchasing your business, connecting them with us and they're kind of your business support team, so we can kind of on the opposite end talk to them about what they're going to need to do and get them the resources that they need to get things moving along.
Yeah, one of the things that we do when we do buyers working groups as well, where we kind of prep buyers to get ready to buy businesses, and we tell them, like, go establish a relationship with a bank, get to know who your banker is, understand what their underwriting terms are, what's important to them, understand who the economic development organizations are in your area that do lending and what kind of lending do they do. And as a seller, and we'll talk about this more and more, we'll kind of equip you with some of that knowledge so that if your seller hasn't really done that homework, you can kind of steer them to the different organizations and such. So really, the more that you can do to be knowledgeable about the process and available resources and financing and such, the faster the process will go. Matt, I think you're muted.
I think we've covered the next two slides, Zach, if you want to just go to additional resources. So just a few things to remind you of before we kind of get to the final questions and answer section. The CBIT program via INCA has created a Transition in Your North Country Business Guidebook, and it's a fantastic resource. It is available at onanorthcountrybusiness.com, but all liaison offices have printed copies of that guide if you wanted to stop in to get that information. Danny mentioned it in the beginning of this session. We have an amazing small communities, big opportunities conference coming up, which we're preparing all of you to hopefully participate in. And if you're unclear of how that will work, reach out to any of us. And the CBIT program has a great YouTube channel, which has hours of content, other trainings we've done, panel discussions we've had. So be sure to check that out. Danny, if you don't mind popping the link to the YouTube channel in the chat, that would be great. So we'll open it up for additional questions from anyone. You're welcome to either ask them directly or to a particular person generally, or put them in the chat.
Or comments, excuse me, comments as well. Our agenda for our next session is we're going to cover letters of intent in more detail, building a sell sheet, and financing options. The two things that you really need to be able to sell your business are evaluation, like how much you're going to sell it for, and a sell sheet, which is basically a resume for your business. And you know, we put your best foot forward and that kind of thing. But if there are other things that other topics that you would like us to cover, either chime in now, either verbally or via the chat and that kind of thing. If you have specific things that that you want us to go into in more detail, we can sure do that.
And if it's helpful, I'm happy to sort of call on folks and do that part and kind of maybe help to point the questions in the right direction to the right person. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat. You can raise your hand or you can take yourself off mute and just go ahead and ask it. And we'll give you a minute to think about it.
Hey, let me know. So are a lot of folks on the call like hoping to sell, like eager beaver, like ready tomorrow to sell my business, even just a raise of hands? Nobody. Okay. I don't know about the people. There's a lot of people I can't see, but okay. So maybe just planning for the future, which is even better, right? Because we did talk about the fact that it can take time, and understanding that and being kind of mentally prepared for that is important for sure.
I had a question. You had mentioned that the slides from the presentation tonight are available. How would I access that once this program is over for this evening?
Charlie, that's a great question. We'll make sure to email those out to you right after, probably first thing in the morning. You'll have the slides in your email. And then I'll also direct you a little bit back to the YouTube videos as well. So feel free to check those out. I know we went through that goal really quickly about like all the different, and there's an 8-minute video of just that circle again, so you can watch that one again if you need to, but we'll make sure you get the slides.
8 minutes is a lot of that.
it's a lot of it.
Are they, clearly labeled?
Yeah,
that you can
but
look.
if you're like, oh gosh, I really want to learn about this one thing, just tell me and I'll send you the right. Well,
Yeah.
tell us and we'll send you the link to the one that's going to be release specific. But
Yeah, Charlie, I'm not going to lie. Like, it is stunning to me that YouTube is successful as it is, because their like hierarchy on organizing the videos is not spectacular. Like, I know what I'm looking for sometimes and I can't find it. So just reach out and we'll send it.
Unfortunately, I suppose it's a whole new world for me, but I'll try to dive in.
I also have a sheet that says like, here's the video and like, here's what's included. So we'll send that with the follow-up email too. That's a great point.
Okay. Yeah, the selling your business for dummies kind of version.
You only do it once most of the time. It's not your fault you don't know how to do it. Right?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. I've done sellers working groups for a while, and sometimes it's like 8 hours of content. And so we're kind of smushing it down into a much tighter. And now I'm having an Angela moment and I can't remember what I was going to say.
I don't know if you're going to say, just touching upon things, and that really having one-on-one sessions with us is important, because there's so much content and there's so many steps, and they're often going to change based personally on your business. So,
And how
yeah.
would one go about doing that? Just reaching out, emailing?
You can certainly do that. We will actually, Angela will actually be reaching out to you. So she has the list of everybody who is on the session. So you can see her. Angela, do you mind waving in again so folks know it? There she is. So she'll be reaching out to you. We have her as a contractor for the next couple of months. So, and she can help you specifically with some of the valuation concerns and things like that. But she'll also, if you
Yeah,
have
'cause
not
everyone's-
already connected with a local liaison, ensure that you're making that connection as well, and they can do different things.
That's very impressive. Thank you.
More questions?
Oh,
Again,
so that's what I was going to say. You guys, sorry, you have spent years building your business. Like, you are masters of your craft, right? And you should be very proud of what you have built. And these are uncharted waters, right? Like, for, I'm going to guess 95, if not 100% of you, it's probably the first time that you've sold your business. And so kudos to you for being part of this and learning about what it is. Because yeah, there's a lot that goes on, and just having the information is super helpful. And I certainly wish I had been through this before I bought and then sold my business. And I worked for the SBDC for 4 years before I bought my business. So it's really specific language, and really specific, and it's a lot, right? And so we'll repeat things. And just a little note, there's going to be an anonymous quiz at the beginning of our next session. And just one, it helps us understand whether or not you're getting material, and just it allows us to kind of do a review of this session. Because, you know, if we all knew things the first time we heard it, we would never have to study for anything. And we know that's not the case. So you have to hear things a lot of times to really understand the material. Sorry, Angela, you were going to jump in.
I was just going to ask if anybody is interested, even remotely interested in doing the matchmaking. You're not sure. I'm going to reach out and let's talk, because the hardest piece of selling a business is finding that potential buyer. So matchmaking opportunities like this don't come around very often, and it's a way to, you know, get exposure for your business, your idea. Even if it's anonymous, there's a way where we can do it without mentioning the specific business and still marketing it. So potentially you have some conversation. I would love for you to sell your business at conference. That's probably not, it's going to happen. It's not the intention. The intention is for you to have some conversations, get exposure for your business, and hopefully continue discussions after conference.
And what
if
was the
someone sells
date
their
of
business
that?
at conference, I want to know. That'd be amazing.
Charlie, the conference is February 12th through 14th at the Hotel Saranac, or you can attend virtually.
I think that's pretty convenient.
If you're a seller, you do not have to pay if you're participating in matchmaking. So just wanted to repeat that, because someone has registered and paid. As sellers participating in matchmaking, you are doing this free of charge. We're here to help you. Do not pay.
So we're going to be quiet for another second and let you ask more questions if you have them. If you want to put them in the chat and raise your hand.
Is there an agenda available for this conference in mid-February?
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're able to see the chat, there is a conference information link right there. And if you scroll down to the middle, called northcountryopportunities.com. And if you scroll down to the kind of bottom-ish of the page, there's a full agenda there. But I can also attach that in the email tomorrow. That's helpful for you too. Dave, you unmuted yourself. Do you have something you'd like to ask as well? Oh, we can't hear you.
Me?
What's that?
Oh, there, we got one other question. Charlie, hold on one second. David, do you have a question or something you'd like to ask?
Can you hear me? The problem I run into in this process is when I go through it all, the valuation of everything is very low. Now, I've been here 44 years, my father and I. We own everything. We have 7 acres, you know. It's easier for me to shut it down and just live here than it is to sell it and walk away with nothing, you know, and I find this process very difficult, and it has been very difficult. And I don't know. I just don't know who I need to speak to or how I put this thing together, but I do well out here. But when you put it down the way you guys do, you want to sell it for nothing, you know, and it just doesn't work for me.
Sometimes the real estate is worth more than the business can support. That does happen. And you're right. Then typically people will sell the real estate and not necessarily ask for anything for the business. So the real estate sometimes just, you know, the numbers don't work when you try to do it with the business. We see that a lot with bed and breakfasts, right? The first seller, second seller, and then price keeps climbing, but you still have the same amount of rooms and ceiling price. So at some point then might be converted back to a residence again because the business aspect doesn't work. But I'd be interested to talk more, Dave. Again, owner operator restaurants, there's typically you know, a lot we can look at. So I'd invite you to talk.
I was going to say, Angela.
Seller's discretionary earnings, because what we can do too is create the scenario, right? From a buyer's perspective, like forget the tax return and stuff, and you might have to be more flexible with sellers with holding paper, but you know, create the scenario where if it was owner operated, you would basically live here for free and the business would pay for all of this. So, you know, we can create a narrative with your business that yes, right now when you look, you know, at the returns, doesn't support it, but you know, there is wiggle room there. We know that.
I was just going to say, Dave, that Angela will be a great partner for you. So having a meeting individually with her is a really good idea.
And Dave, do you feel like you have, actually, it's a question that Angela can ask you. Just, are you running a lot through your business, or have you kind of pulled back so that you're showing profitability on your returns or whatever? You don't have to answer that. Angela can help you work. She can take whatever valuation you've done and just give it a once over.
And I'm not saying specifically you, but some business owners may have scaled back, right? They're spending the winters in Florida and they're only running it in the high season. So yeah, it looks a little different, but you also don't have the debt that a new owner. So you also have to sell opportunity, right? If you know you've been scaling back because you're preparing for retirement, yeah, okay, the numbers of the last 3-4 years might not, you know, support a full-time business, but the opportunity is there. And especially if you've had a business that's been around for 20 years, we can probably look at some of the numbers further back when you were running full-time. So that happens as well.
Dad and I have been here over 40 years, so we've been here quite a while and done quite well with it.
Now I've been here 30 years. Hey.
It's on.
Okay. Yeah, let's not forget about me, Matt, right?
I agree, Beth. You should have been straight the whole time.
Like, I'm front of the house. I'm the girl. Me and Dad.
Where's my dog? Dogs are easier.
He set me up to make dinner. Sorry.
She's definitely correct. You guys are definitely an amazing team.
It's terrible when he silences me.
Does anybody else have any more questions that they'd like to ask? You can always, again, reach out to us individually. Angela will be reaching out to you individually as well in between these 2 sessions. But does anybody else have a question that they might want to ask right now that's burning for them?
I want to be where Victoria is. It looks nice and warm. Where are you, Victoria?
Yeah.
We're in Mexico.
So next week's
It did look mighty lush. Very
What?
nice.
Oh my goodness.
So you need to sell your business to do more of this, right?
Well, you know,
Somebody said go on vacation before you sell your business. So, yeah,
True.
we've been down here 2
Love
months.
that.
They're just following
That's
directions.
Right. But the other question we want to know, is there enough wine to go around?
Mm.
On that
All right,
happy
y'all.
note,
So next week we'll do this again. Same time, same bad channel, right? 5 to 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Am I getting that right? So let me give it.
Or we could go to Mexico.
Okay.
And Dave will bring the wine.
Then you are
We'll
correct.
We're booking
We'll
trips
send out
next
an
year.
email with some follow-up stuff in the slides, and then we'll just keep working on this. And we know that this is a lot of information thrown at you in a short amount of time, and this is really just kind of scratching the surface and getting us started. So thanks for bearing with us and trying to kind of digest a lot in a short amount of time. And just a quick thank you again to all of our presenters and supporters tonight and liaisons. And if you have questions about the program or anything, just please do not hesitate to reach out, and we're here to support you.
Thank
That's
you.
good. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great night.
Did you want us to stay on, or are we all set, Danny?
So, do you guys want to talk for a few seconds about next week? Are you good? Are we good to go for that?
Same format, right? I'm doing the intro, introduce you, and then we all have the content divided up, so I think we're okay. And I like Angela and Kim interjecting, because I think it kind of breaks things up a little bit and it's not so monotonous. So keep it up.
We have the stories.
Yeah. I definitely think connecting with Dave will be a good idea, because I think he's got some challenges, but they have a very successful business with a lot of opportunity. And like you said, you could live there ultimately for free.
Well, and that's the thing, I was working with someone today, and there's circumstances that change, but when we talk about owner-operator businesses, those are some of the perks, right? Like, hey, I haven't paid a mortgage and I don't know how long, because it's all in the business, and that has a value.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, they have run his father, and then now Dave and Beth have run a very, very successful business, and it's really an anchor in Ticonderoga, so we want to make sure that it stays.
Great. Excellent. Well, then we'll see y'all next week. Thanks so much for your time and doing this. And Matt, how did you get out of talking? Matt Tucker, how did you get out of talking? Huh?
Luck.
I hope you get put on the spot.
Next week.
Okay.
And I'm
All right,
circling
guys.
back to you tomorrow, Matt Tucker.
All right, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.